Okay, thank you very much, and good morning. I have a lot of material to go through, so please excuse me if I go through it quite quickly. You may recognise the 360 image as part of the session that David Cookall ran, so you may well find yourself on one of the videos that I'm going to show you later on in the presentation. Okay, so I'm going to talk about three very much interrelated topics. First part, I'm going to talk about gamification, then I'm going to move on to storytelling, and then finally I'm going to talk about 360-degree imaging using the kind of cameras that you see on the stage there and that I'm holding up here. Just one point to mention to you, and that is that I will be recording my own presentation in 360 degrees, but because the camera has twin lenses, it will also record the audience. It's quite useful for me to be able to pick out any bad mannerisms that I might have that I find irritating to myself, but also it helps me to keep track of who is paying attention in the audience when I'm playing back. Okay, so my objectives are to demonstrate why those three skills, gamification, storytelling, and the 360-degree technologies and how to use them, are very important in 21st century learning. And I hope also that after this session, you will go away with something tangible that you can use in your own environment. So I want to try and equip you with some ideas, tools and techniques that you can use in your own situation, not just in the classroom, but in everyday life. It's also important for me, anyway, as a human being, to feel that I can entertain you with some of the stories which have inspired my passion for lifelong learning and hopefully will have some impact on you. And finally, and possibly most importantly, I want to challenge you to think about the future of education and the kind of world that we are moving in today, because it's very different from the world that I grew up in as a child and the world that I went through my education in. So to begin with, and perhaps a little bit controversially, I want to ask what gamification is. My view on the subject is that every human activity or every human activity with an interaction with another human being is a game, and it can be viewed as a game. And to extend this a little bit further, I believe that gamification and gameplay is built into our DNA. Not just our DNA, but also the DNA of animals. Anybody who's owned a pet will understand how they can manipulate and persuade their owners to give them some food by as a way of trying to influence the world about us. And by trying different tactics and techniques, we learn about ourselves and about the way the world works. But as we grow older and we get more and more used to the way the world works, then maybe we lose some of those skills, which can be quite important for today. So, games are part of everyday vocabulary. Does anybody recognise the man there? Anybody recognise who he is? I'm hoping that you'll see him again tonight. It's Gareth Southgate. He's the England football manager. Obviously very happy that he won. But games, whether they're part of sport or whether they're part of politics, are part of our everyday vocabulary. And I believe that every human activity you can view through something that I've developed called the gamification lens. And the gamification lens really reflects the kind of roles that different people play in different situations in their lives. And the position that you are in this pyramid or lens, it relates to the amount of influence and ability you have to influence outcomes. So at the very bottom, we have a personality that I call the hermit. So a hermit is somebody who is not interested really in what's happening. And we're all hermits in different ways in our life. So if somebody was going to give me some information about crochet, I would be a hermit, because it's not something I'm interested in. I don't really want to develop my crochet skills, and so it would take an awful lot to persuade me to get involved in that. The next level up, which is probably most of us are at in a lot of activities in our life, is a spectator. We're interested in things, we read the news, we're aware of what's happening, we might be knowledgeable, but we don't really try to affect outcomes. So you could be in politics, for example. You get people who read about politics every day, but they don't get really actively involved in that. I call those spectators, and they don't really influence outcomes. But the next level up is I call the fun. These are people who are really passionate about things, and even though they cannot directly influence things, they play a big part in sustaining an activity. So funds are very integral in supporting football and all major sports. Without funds, they would not exist. But the reality is that if you are a fan in a large football stadium, you really don't have much chance to influence the outcome. Collectively, when you're cheering your team on, you might be able to influence the outcome. Above that is the player. Now, these are people who really want to win. They're winners, they want to get involved, they want to develop their skills, they want to influence the outcome. So this is why I got a picture of Harry Kane. But above that, you have people who are not necessarily good players themselves, but have the ability, the skills to act as motivators, tacticians and coaches. And this is where I would put the manager of the England football team. And this, incidentally, is where, if you are a teacher, you should be. You should have the skills to be able to motivate and influence people, your students, to change the world. So that's one little bit of theory. The other bit of theory is what I call the gamification cycle. And every gamification activity, every game, goes through this kind of cycle. It starts off with a challenge to which you've got the ability to respond. You have an ability to measure whether you've scored goals, whatever the outcome is, and provide feedback. And that goes in a continuous loop. So the big question I have for you is, if what I'm saying is true, if every human activity can be viewed as a game, how is it possible to gamify an activity? If it's already a game, how can you gamify it? So let's have a look at gamifying a game. You've got pictures of teams there, you've got somebody playing golf. It fascinates me to think, I'll try to imagine, the very first person who played golf. How did they get the idea? How did they suddenly think it's going to be great fun holding a stick and whacking a ball around the countryside? How did they imagine that would catch on? And it was only by introducing gamification elements that they were able to capture a large audience and have a passionate following all around the world. So there must have been some elements or ingredients that they inserted into this activity to make it so compelling. And the same applies to the classroom, the same applies to human relationships. Human relationships are a big game in themselves. So if you take any human activity, whether it's already a game and recognised as a game, or whether it's something like applying for a job, finding a new girlfriend, building a relationship, injecting gamification elements has a big and important part to play in engaging and influencing the outcomes. And I produced a white paper which introduces the concept of gamification elements. These are some of the things that are associated with games and gameplay, scenarios and narratives, challenges, rules, etc. All of these things are part of games and gamification. So the question is, how can we easily introduce these elements into education? Well, one of the techniques that I use, that any teacher can use, just a very simple thing, are these cards. Okay, you have cards, and you go around and you ask people to select a card. ask you to select the card. Okay. Tom Tree, select the card. Okay, you may be called upon later to answer a question. Can I get you to take the card? Yeah. Any card. You've drawn the short straw, you don't have a choice. Okay, so by giving out cards, now one of the things that is an outcome of me giving out cards is a certain amount of uncertainty in the minds of those who've got the cards. What's he going to do? Which raises their level of engagement, waiting for the time when I maybe pick them out and give them a challenge, which will come, I promise you. It's also the fact that everybody is different. There's not only the mechanics and the psychology don't work on everybody in the same way. So this white paper gives some examples of influences. So why gamification? We live in an attention economy, and today's learners have very different expectations from when I was growing up. But I think it's important to make the point that human beings generally need games. And why they need games is because we have this inbuilt desire in our nature to believe that we have some control over our destiny and our lives. And we have an opportunity to develop the skills that will allow us to control our destiny. And of the research that I've heard about, one of the phenomena, apparently, in today's students is that they are moving from an internal locus of control, which means that they believe that they have some control over their lives and their destiny, towards an external locus of control. In other words, the younger generation are feeling less and less that they are able to control their own destiny. And I don't think that's a good thing for society. And finally, this is a quote from Robert Louis Stevenson, which I believe in, is, "It's better to travel hopefully than to arrive, and that true success is to labour." And what this means to me is that you can never totally succeed. If you succeed, you reach the end of your journey, there is nowhere else to go. So it's important for human beings always to have new goals to strive for. So this is the gamification white paper I mentioned. There's a web link there. I'll happy to provide anybody with any links about this afterwards. So that's gamification. Storytelling has played a big part in my life. And one of the things that I'd like to just share with you is something which I think is one of the benefits of being as old as I am, right? Because we have, in our generation, have seen things in our lives that the younger generation will never see. We have met people who are no longer with us, and we've been influenced by them. Willie mentioned, showed some examples of videos. Most of the people are still alive, but there was one person that you mentioned that was dead. But his influence lives on. And the fact that Willie has been able to meet these people gives him an insight that younger students will not have. And so it's just a couple of examples of people who are no longer with us that have inspired me. And these people that I show on the screen here are people that I met at a single conference in Berkeley. Does anybody recognise the guy, the white-haired guy on the right? Anybody recognise who he is? No, you don't know him. You may never even have heard of him, but he is an influence on your life today. Without his work, you would not be able to do many of the things that you take for granted today. His name is Doug Engelbart, and I had the pleasure of having lunch with him in Berkeley. He is the inventor of the computer mouse. And you see his very first mouse underneath there. It's a wooden box with wheels. He also was the person who invented hyperlinks. So when you click on a web link and go to another page, here's the man who invented that. And he was in his 80s when I met him, but his passion for life and learning still went on. The other guy is an Apollo 14 astronaut, Ed Mitchell. He was one of the people who was brave enough to try and fly to the moon after the Apollo 13 disaster. And the picture that you see underneath there is a picture of the moon that he actually took with his own camera when he was on the moon and on the lunar mission. So those people and the stories that they told me had a big influence. But everybody has their own story. And their stories are based on the places we've been to, the people we've met, the experiences that we've had in our lives. I'm just conscious of the time to make sure that I don't overrun, but very briefly, I'll explain why I put these pictures up here. The picture on the right is of a church called the Boston Stump. I was born in Boston, which is where the Pilgrim Fathers originally set off when they tried to found America. I've shown the picture of the globe because, kind of coincidentally, my parents bought me one of these globes when I was a young boy, and I used to spin it round. And one of the places that really fascinated me more than anything else was Siam. I used to look at the map, see Siam, and instead of seeing just a name and a shape of the country, I was imagining what it was like. I think the reason why I was so fascinated with Siam, or Thailand as it is now, was because my mum loved Yul Brynner in a film called The King and I, which was based in about the King of Siam. The classroom situation was typical of how I became interested in storytelling. We had a teacher who would sit and tell us Biggles stories. The car that you see there is a Humber Snipe. My uncle was the first person in our street ever to have a car. It was nicknamed the Bomb. And 7 of us used to go off in it to the seaside for our holidays. And unlike today's cars, and this is where, you know, you will never probably have this experience in your lives as younger people, the car had to be serviced every time we went out. My uncle, my dad, used to check the oil, they would clean the points, they would clean the spark plugs, and it still broke down. Everywhere we went, there were places we saluted where the car had broken down. But it's an example of a technology that existed then that required human skill and experience and ingenuity to get the best out of. That television set you see there is exactly like the first television set I had as a child. We didn't have a television until I was 5, and it was a black and white set. Looked exactly like that. And we used to have a television repairman who would come to visit our house regularly and fix it. I worked for British Telecom. The phones were a bit more sophisticated than that, but the computer that you see there is an example of the very first computer that I ever sold as an IBM salesman. It was the forerunner of the IBM PC, and it had a wonderful 64K of memory, and 2 floppy disks with a total of 2.4 megabytes of disk storage, and we sold those for £8,000. So you're talking about, if you multiply that by 40, about 320,000 baht equivalent. So today's machines, the ones that I'm using there, are millions of times more powerful and a fraction of the cost that one was. And the picture that you see there is my avatar, my alter ego, when I was director of the Serious Games Institute. My avatar is standing outside the virtual Serious Games Institute that we lose. So when we talk about training people for the jobs of tomorrow, I've compiled this list of 21st century skills. So in order to succeed in today's society, you need to know about subjects, you need to have judgment, you've got to be able to analyse data, you need to develop experience, demonstrate sensitivity and awareness, be self-motivated, creative, and a good team player. Anybody disagree with that list of skills? No? Anybody disagree with that? Those set of skills were exactly the same skills that related to the job that I wanted. Yes, David? The skill of learning. I won't disagree with that, and the next time I do it, I will add on the ability to learn. So this was the characteristics of the job that I really wanted as a boy. Anybody any idea what that job was? You know, so don't say. Anybody any idea?
Railroad engineer.
Oh, what, sorry?
Railroad engineer.
Very good. A steam train driver. This was my dream job as a schoolboy. I wanted to drive a steam train, and there I am. Here I am in the cab. The orange shape that you see there is me, and that is the Flying Scotsman, one of the most famous steam engines in the world. So I got to do my dream job at the age of 60. Okay, it took me a long time to get there, but of course, when you think about that job, do we train people to be steam train drivers today? No, do they spend 3 or 4 or 5 years apprenticeship learning those skills? Why? Why not? Well, this is a good example of why not. This is the picture of the new MRT at Kuala Lumpur. It's a 360-degree picture. There is a video behind that, but in the interest of time, I won't play it to you. But can you notice anything unusual about the front of that vehicle? No driver. There is no driver. The children are at the front where the driver would normally be. This MRT system is totally automated. So the job that I dreamed of as a child no longer exists. So what kind of other jobs are going to be affected? Well, I mentioned the car that we used to have, the bomb, as an example of how in those days we had to use our human skills to get the best from our vehicles, but we were supported by people who made a living from servicing the cars, and I call them knowledge professionals. Because of the lack of technology in the car, there's more breakdowns, a reliance on these knowledge professionals in order to diagnose problems, maintain and repair. But today, of course, this is the inside of my Mini. We have the sensors and devices in our car that help them to be more reliable. Not only that, they tell us where to go. You know, with sat-nav direction, we don't have to use our human skills to follow maps. So this kind of thing really came home to me. The red car that you see on the other side of the screen is an MG sports car that my partner owned, and it's an absolutely beautiful car. And we were going to go on holiday to the south of France, and we thought this would be fantastic. We can drive in that car, you know, with the wind blowing through what hair I've got left, and the luggage strapped to the back. We'll have a great time. But in order to make sure the car was okay to drive down to the south of France, I took it out on a test run, and it broke down after 5 miles. And the man who came out to repair it, you see the yellow jacket there from the AA, it was like all his birthdays had come at once, because he could open the hood and he could actually fix it. He didn't have to take one part and stick it in or plug something in to do the diagnostics. He had to work it out in his head, and he had to clean the points and the spark plugs to get the car going again. And he got so much satisfaction from that, because he didn't get it from modern cars. And so the end result was that we decided it was better to go in my Mini, where we wouldn't have less of a chance of a breakdown. So it doesn't matter what, it doesn't really matter what profession you can think of. it's going to be affected by these kinds of technologies you see on the screen. And for reasons that I won't go into, I'm the Vice President of the International Society of Digital Medicine. So I've been involved in use of digital technologies for medicine and surgery and a range of other applications for quite some time. In particular, my interest is in personal health management and the use of wearables to understand how my body works and to manage it better. But I'll draw your attention to the picture in the top right. You see a lady there looking at the screen, and she's holding a device, and she's doing laparoscopic, difficult to say, laparoscopic surgery. In other words, she's got these devices and she's removing a gallstone. She's doing a simulation that surgeons use to train them how to use a gallstone and remove a gallstone. And it's a gamified simulation. So surgeons or people being trained are marked on how quickly they remove the gallstone, how accurately they do it, and how little damage they do when they're doing it. So very important. But the reason I mention it to you is that the lady who is doing this simulation is my partner. She has no medical experience, she has no interest in playing games whatsoever, and yet she was achieving better results at removing a gallstone than some doctors who are going through their training. So it really begs the question, is now in the age of robotic surgery, are you going to be safer having your gallstone removed or your operation done by a robot or a 15-year-old boy who's skilled at video games than a surgeon who's maybe my sort of age and getting a bit dodgy with his hands? You know, this is the way that the world of work is changing, and we need to be very sensitive to it. So, moving on to looking at teaching and learning, I've crossed out the word learning because I believe that learning has not changed in my lifetime. We all, as human beings, learn in a very same way, and that I don't think will change particularly. But those of us who are responsible for teaching the current generations, we need to understand that the role of the teacher is affected by technology. And one of the things I really believe in is that in the future, when we have a world that is going to be affected by and dominated by artificial intelligence and robotics and other technologies, creativity and so. So, I believe that 360-degree imaging arguably is disruptive to business and society as the internet was. So why virtual reality and 360 imaging? Well, these are some of the reasons. It gives you a sense of being there, gives you a chance to explore and discover. It puts the learner in control, it provides a fun experience, and it can provide a good foundation for storytelling and games-based learning. And this is an example of the Google Cardboard set used in the classroom. One of the game changers, I think, that is literally only just a few days ago being launched onto the market is the Oculus Go headset, which you wear, and it includes surround sound, 360-degree sound. So you wear the headset, and you not only see an immersive environment, but as you turn your head, the sound follows it. I'm just going to give you 7 examples of virtual learning environments that I've been involved in, very quickly. Second Life was one of the first things that we used at the Serious Games Institute. And in this environment, in a virtual world, you can get people involved all over the world, both as an audience and as presenters. And the picture that you see there of St Basil's Cathedral in Red Square is a screenshot from a seminar that I did in Moscow, where I had presenters in Second Life in the UK, I had an audience in different locations around the world joining as avatars in the Red Square, and I had a physical audience like this watching. So it combined the physical and the virtual. So real meetings and simulations in artificial worlds are an important educational tool. Fieldscapes is another example of mixing real and virtual worlds. In other words, people who go to somewhere like the Lake District can share their experience with people in a virtual environment that uses augmented reality to add some extra level of detail to what the physical students are seeing. Google Expeditions provides for group visits and lessons using 360-degree photographs. One of the things that I use it for is to provide for shared experiences. The image that you see there is a 360-degree image of a christening, a family christening that happened about 3 weeks ago. The father and the mother of the baby asked me to record it in 360 because the father's brother lives in Canada. So he couldn't fly over for the christening, but he wanted to share the experience. So by recording it in 360 degrees on his smartphone or on a virtual reality headset, he would get exactly the same experience of the christening as somebody who was actually there. So you can do this to any kind of experiences where people are not physically able to be present. Just to show you some of the tools that I use to create learning experiences. This is a great example for those of you who are interested in exploring this. It's a free tool, it's called Marzipano. So if you Google Marzipano, if you have 360-degree photographs, they will allow you to bring the photographs in and annotate those photographs with hotspots. So you can put information points, and I created this as an example of a retail training tool. So I took a 360 photograph of a new retail outfit at a place called Samrong, which is near Bangkok, not far from Bang Na. And I use this as an example to allow people to navigate around this retail experience and compare some of the tactics, some of the techniques that are used in modern retail to traditional retail outlets. So that's a free tool that anybody can use. And all it required was the camera that I'm using there and the free Marzipano tool. I've just been involved in a Department of International Trade mission to Southeast Asia. So I've been to Indonesia and I've been to Kuala Lumpur. And for both parts of the trip, I ran a masterclass on 360-degree technologies. And I used this tool called Koala to create an interactive quiz. So this is where the cards come in. So if I just click on this picture, it should load up the website with the actual virtual tour. I call it Siangi KL, which stands for We Love Kuala Lumpur. And you can see the Petronas Towers. And you can see that I can rotate all around 360 degrees, and you'll maybe see that there are some bits of text and some links on this environment. And at the bottom of the screen, there are other places that I can visit as part of this quiz. So this is where the cards come in. So, has anybody got a card number 5? Who's got card number 5? The cards? Anybody got card 5? Ah, you got card 5. Okay. Now, this quiz was about Kuala Lumpur. Have you ever been to Kuala Lumpur? No. Okay. Well, that may be a little bit difficult for you, but I'm going to ask you what's wrong with this picture. if you know other parts of the world, you may be able to answer it. Okay, what's wrong with this picture?
Actually, this lion is not in Kuala Lumpur.
Yes! Well done! Give her a round of applause. It's in Singapore. So it was a deliberate mistake that I put in there. But by giving the cards out at random and picking people out, I gave them a chance to be engaged and to take part and understand how you can use these technologies in that environment. So we'll go back to the presentation. Find the right one. So, David and I have talked about 360-degree video and different applications. Well, I showed you an application of an interactive quiz you can easily. But one of the big revelations for me is its tremendous potential for debriefing. Because if you record a games-based icebreaker game or something like that, you can analyse the video in ways that are only possible if you can see it in 360 degrees. And I want to show you this example, and it came about almost by accident. I was a participant in an icebreaker game, and the game was called the Marshmallow Game. You know it, Willie? Yes. Yeah? So the idea of the marshmallow game is you're given some spaghetti sticks, you're given a marshmallow, and you're given some tape, and as a team around a table, you have to build the highest freestanding structure. So here are the participants, and I just want to play the video to you. And as I play the video, I'm not going to play all of it. I'm just going to play the beginning and maybe move on a little bit, and then to show the point. So this is in 360 degrees. So you can see we're beginning, we're talking about the game and how to proceed. And you see the lady here. Doesn't look very interesting. The other ones are listening. And what I've done is I've speeded up the video later on. So you can see us building the tower. And by being able to rotate the picture, I can see the body language and the level of engagement of each individual player. You see the lady there? Not very interested still. Okay, but it told me something about myself. You know, I wasn't bringing her into the game. I was too busy building the structure to really involve her. And now she's showing a bit more interest. If I move on a bit more, she's looking round. Now she's starting to get involved. Now she's really involved. And you can only get that kind of analytics in 360 degrees. So I'll just then stop this one and just show you the video quality is not too good because I've had to take individual screenshots of this particular girl to show how her level of engagement changed over the period of the game. So I reduced a 20-minute game into 60 seconds. So after 1 minute, she was like that. 2 minutes, still not interested. 3 minutes, maybe. No, don't really know about this. No, not really interested. Can't see what I can do. Oh, I'm totally bored now. Ah, that's something that might be of interest. I'll see what other people are doing. Yeah, they look more interested than what we're doing. What can I do now with this stick of spaghetti? Ah, yes, I can stand up and start helping. Now I'm concentrating. Now I'm smiling. I'm enjoying this. I'm going to get involved. I'm going to help with the masking tape. I'm really happy to be doing this. Look at what we're doing on our table. My goodness, it's a tall tower. Yes, we are the winners. So you can see, as an example of debriefing, you can learn a lot about your own behaviour as well as the behaviour of other players. So to go quickly to the Tiger Icebreaker game, this was a different kind of game. So whereas in the previous game I had a camera set up on the table to record just one team, with this I was trying to record activity of a lot of people on the trading floor. So this is maybe showing a different way of debriefing. So we're not looking just at a small group of people. So you can see when the trading started, it was just a little bit light, just a few people wandering about. And then you'll see as the game developed. Now, watch this man with the orange shirt. He was very interesting. So I'm able to follow it. He's looking at people's cards, he's moving on very quickly, having a quick look, having a quick chat. No, I'm not interested in you. Then going on to somebody else. And you see a particular style of behaviour. And you can't hear the audio at the moment, but David is showing a little bit of attention to this guy, because he's picked out that he's not abiding by the rules. He's not holding hands with people. So he draws his attention to the need to be able to hold hands when you're doing this game. So as an exercise, 360-degree video gives you capabilities really that are difficult to do with any other form of media. And of course you can analyse the whole thing and each individual player when you're doing it. So in conclusion, and I'm just about finished on time, I think it's very important to really think very carefully about the world that we're moving into. And the points that I want to make are the fact that human qualities will be vital for success in a world which is going to be dominated by artificial intelligence and robotics, and vocational education is going to be increasingly important. And the tools, the skills that we need to build relationships, communicate, collaborate, and influence, these are the kind of skills that, as technology exists at the moment, cannot be replicated by machines. So we need to take advantage of those human skills that are not available in machines. And so gamification, storytelling, and creative use of technology will be very important. And these 360-degree imaging applications, I think, will play an increasingly important role in learning and development for gamification, storytelling, and debriefing. And with that, I say thank you very much for your attention. And if anybody would like to ask me any questions afterwards, then please do. I just overrun by about 3 or 4 minutes, but Song Shui, hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Professor David.
My name is Mahidol University. I am the conference organizer for the next conference, which will be held in Warsaw in the very last week of August and 2019. And this is going to be a very special event because this year, and in 2019, it's going to be the ISAGA will turn 50. So it's a golden anniversary. And we want to bring a very special event. So for the whole 5 days, we prepared a lot of interesting elements. And also, starting from today, the conference website